All right, we're going to talk about matter and the physical and chemical properties of it today. All right, so first off, what is chemistry? Well, chemistry is the study of matter, its organization, and how it behaves. So, matter specifically is anything that has mass and takes up space. Now, these are concepts and definitions and words you've heard and used before, and you've probably learned what these mean before. But we're going to talk about something new. We're going to talk about what the properties are of matter. And properties are simply the characteristics that can describe the appearance and or behavior of matter. Now, there are two types of properties we're going to look at, physical and chemical properties. The first are physical properties. So for physical properties, these are the properties of matter that you're probably familiar with. So they're determined without changing the actual chemical composition. In other words, they are observed. All right. You don't actually do anything to the substance. You don't actually do anything to the object. You look at it or you measure it. Okay. So these are properties that can be figured out or determined using your eyes, using a scale, using a ruler, etc. So some examples of these physical properties. Again, these are observed with your senses. So for example, the color of an object, so it could be red, it could be blue. The odor, is it putrid? Does it smell burnt? Does it smell spicy? The texture, so if you touch it or rub your hands or fingers over it, does it feel coarse or smooth? Does it feel fine? Does it feel gritty? The luster, is it shiny? Is it dull? The clarity, can you see through it? Is it clear or is it cloudy? Can you only partially see through it? Is it opaque? Can you not see light through it at all? And then finally, taste. Does it taste sweet, salty, sour, or bitter? Now, these are all properties that you are fairly familiar with. These are all things that words that you could have used to describe anything you've ever seen before. Um, just a quick little reminder on taste. When you're in science, you never taste anything. That's a really unsafe thing to do. But the rest of these you could very easily do in a lab or you could do sitting at home. Now, the next properties, the next physical properties, are a little less familiar, and they are typically things that require tests or measurements to actually measure. So one of them that you are probably familiar with would be the state. So is it a solid, is it a liquid, or is it a gas? The hardness, that is as far as the scientific definition of hardness is, that is the resistance to being scratched or dented. And there are actually ways of measuring specifically how hard a substance is. Malleability. Is it a substance that you're able to bend into different shapes? Are you able to flatten it out into a sheet? So for example, gold. Right? You can take gold, you can take solid chunks of gold and flatten it out into a sheet. Ductility. Can you actually draw it out into long, thin wires? So something like copper, for example, can be drawn into wires that can be used for electricity. The melting and boiling points. That is the temperature at which a substance changes state. So we're talking about going from a solid to a liquid or going from a liquid to a gas. Solubility. Are you able to dissolve the substance into something else? And usually when we're talking about solubility, we're talking about, is it soluble in water? So if you put it in water, will it dissolve? Viscosity. How easily does a liquid flow? So for example, compare water to ketchup or honey. All right. When you try to pour it, how easily does it actually pour? And then finally, density, and that is the amount of matter per unit volume of that substance. All right. Now, chemical properties are a little less familiar to you, but some of them you will be quite familiar with. For chemical properties, we are describing the behavior of a substance when it's in the presence of something else or when subjected to some kind of energy. In other words, when we're talking about chemical properties, we're talking about how does it react if we put it into a situation. Now, there are a number of different situations that we can put a substance into to see how it reacts. For example, we can try to burn it. Is it combustible? We can see, does it react if we put it in oxygen? Or does it react when we put it in acid? Or does it react when we put it in water? All right, so that's technically called reactivity. Is it sensitive to light? If it is exposed to light, is there some sort of reaction? All right, there are substances that will glow when you actually expose it to light. So, a little summary. Physical versus chemical change. When we're describing the physical properties of a substance, we're looking at the characteristics that don't change the substance. What we're looking at is, how does it look? What does it feel like? What are its mass? What can we measure or test that will actually give us some sort of insight as to what that object is? When we're looking at physical properties, we are not reacting it with something else. That means that no new substance is going to be formed when we are observing these types of properties. For chemical properties, we are looking at what happens when the substance reacts. So when it actually has some sort of reaction to another chemical or to some sort of energy that's given to it. When we are observing chemical properties, we are changing the substance. All right, we are forming something new. And as we get farther along, we'll spend a little bit more time about how to recognize when a chemical change has happened. But for now, just understand that when we're looking at physical properties, we're looking at what it looks like, things that we can measure that don't affect what it is, that don't change it. When we're looking at chemical properties, we're looking at how it reacts to other substances to make something new.